Hey guys, welcome back to photography class. Now in this week, we'll be learning all the basic setting of your camera. That including your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. Now before we get started, let me talk to you about what a shooting mode is. So here's what we have, just two different cameras. I'll be showing you guys how to select in different modes and everything. So first of all, if you use Nikon, to select the modes on your camera, it's probably going to be similar as what I have on here. Even though this is an old camera, but it's still probably going to be the similar way to select a mode. Alright, now to choose your different shooting mode, here you have a mode button right here. So what you do is you press and hold it, and then on the wheels you basically just rotate it, you have different mode. Now here what we have is called program mode, and here's the shutter speed priority, and you have your aperture priority, and you have your menu mode. And this will be the mode that we'll be using to finishing up our assignment for today, where we'll be learning, which is in menu mode, you will have ability to adjust your aperture and your shutter speed freely, just like that. Now this F number is the aperture. Now this number is your shutter speed, and it's your ISO here. Let's set this away. Let me get this one. Now, if you use Canon, and it will be so much easier to adjust the shooting mode here. So what you need to do, you basically just need to rotate it here. And like I said, the mode that we're looking for is M. This is the menu mode that we're gonna need. And since this camera is a lot newer, turn it on here. So all the info, so you're gonna see it on the screen here, which is gonna make a lot easier. So on Canon, normally you will only have one wheel to adjust the shutter speed here. And if you wanna adjust your aperture here, also your ISO is gonna be right here. All right. Just select whatever you need here. This is it. Now here let's talk about ISO. Now ISO simply is a camera setting that will brighten or darken your photo. Now as you increase your ISO number, your photo will obviously going to be a lot brighter, but your photo is also going to be noisy. You're going to see a lot of little noise all over your picture. But later on we're going to learn how to fix it. But also try to use as low as ISO, because the lower your ISO number is, the more clear shots you're going to get. Alright, now here I'm going to show you how to set your ISO. Now first thing is you want to make sure your camera is turned on and you are on menu mode. To set your ISO is you press the button down and hold it. Use your shutter speed wheel to change your ISO. Now I'm working on a Nikon camera, so if you use Nikon, this is how you're set your ISO. Now in case if you wanted to use auto, is you would use while you're holding down your ISO button and you want to use your aperture wheel, turn it once, you can set it to auto. Now this camera is too old, so it doesn't have the function. On my other Nikon, this is how you set your auto ISO. Alright, now here I'm going to show you guys how to set your ISO on Canon. It's very simple. Make sure your camera is on, and on your info screen here, and you hold your ISO here, or click once, and you can select your ISO just like that. Very easy, very simple. There you go. Now, here's where we're going to talk about aperture. Now, aperture is adjustable lens opening that control the amount of light allowed into your camera. aperture also will show f on your camera, or what we call it f-stops. Now, here's a little bit of a tricky part about aperture. The smaller the f-stop number is, the larger your aperture is. The bigger of your f number is, the smaller of your aperture is. Alright guys, here I'm going to show you how to set your aperture. Make sure your camera is on, make sure you're in menu mode, and right here this is your f number that we were talking about, or f-stops number that we're talking about. To set this number, what you need to do is you just need to adjust your aperture wheel here at front of your camera. Remember what we're talking about, the smaller the number is, the larger your aperture is. The larger the number is, the smaller your aperture is. Alright, now let me show you how to do it on Canon camera. Now make sure your camera is on. You will often see a button called AV. Now if you hold this button and use the adjustable wheel, you can increase or you can decrease your aperture, or you can increase your aperture. Now here let's talk about what aperture would affect your image. Now here what we see is a really nice clean object with a blurred, completely blurred background. Now this is what a big or large aperture will offer you to do, which means smaller the f number. Now in the opposite way, if you have really small aperture, it's gonna get you really clean background and also with a really clean foreground. Now, as a comparison, let's check out this picture. This picture is what I took with aperture 8 or f-stop number 8. So it's definitely smaller aperture setting. So as you see in the background, you can see really nice texture, as long as the focal point on the watch, the dial is super clear as well. Now, if you want the depth of field, which means if you want the background blur, increase your aperture. Now if you want the background clear and your object clear, make sure you decrease your aperture. Now here's shutter speed. Shutter speed is exactly what it sounds like. It's the length of time your shutter open and close. And of course, the faster your shutter speed is, the less amount light you're letting in your camera, and then the slower your shutter speed is, the more light you're letting it in to your camera. The pictures here on the right, in this picture I was using 5-second shutter speed. So I basically use a tripod and I set my camera there, let it take 5-second long shutter speed shot, and you will create the movement of the ladies are dancing on the stage. You will have the effects like that. It's really, really cool effects. And later on, we're gonna learn more about it. Here, let me show you how to set your shutter speed. On Nikon, it's really simple, since we have two different wheels. One is a aperture wheel, and one is called shutter speed. When you get ready, you'll simply just rotate it to right to increase your, to get faster shutter speed. Rotate it to left to decrease your shutter speed. Set this away. On Canon, it's really simple as well, since you only have one wheel, and by default this wheel will only affect to your shutter speed. The same way, going to the left, going to right, it's going to make it faster. Going to left, it's going to decrease the speed. Alright, now here, let's learn about how to get a balanced exposure on your camera. So here what we have is the triangle of exposure. So what we have on the top is ISO, and what we have on the bottom is the shutter speed and aperture. As you see in here, in order to create the perfect exposure in an image, you always want to balance out your shutter speed and aperture. And remember, different aperture and a different shutter speed will give you completely different result. And make sure you have enough of light source. If you don't, simply just increase your ISO, but still try to use as low as possible. Alright, here guys, I'm going to show you how to use your chart that built in your camera to take a proper exposure picture by using your menu mode. So while you in menu mode, make sure you're in menu mode, and you should see like a little chart here from negative all the way to positive. So what this will do is your camera, the light sensor in your camera is basically detecting the light source that in your camera with your setting of your shooting mode, or your shutter speed and your aperture and your ISO. Now, for instance, right here, let's bump it up my shutter speed all the way to 125. And as you see right here, my camera's telling me the picture that I'm about to take is going to be a underexposure picture. Let's test it out. Now, as you guys see right here, it is a super dark picture. I mean, you can still see it, but it's definitely an underexposure picture. All right, let's try to fix it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna decrease my shutter speed to around 20th of a second. I'm gonna take another picture to see if it will change or it's gonna be better. As you see right here, it's a lot better. And I'm gonna go increase a little bit since we do have a super low ISO. So the pictures is not really noisy at all. Even you zoom in, you can still see it pretty clear. Now, if I move all the way up, what's gonna happen is going to be super bright, and it's obviously overexposure. So in this week, what I want you guys to do is really just get into menu mode, because once actually you get used to it, I know it's a lot of setting to do and stuff like that, but once you actually get into it, you can adjust your lights and everything super fast. So in the end, let's talk about the homework. So of this week, you will have two parts of homework to do. So the first part is the form. That part's really simple. What you're gonna do is you go on the form. I believe I have 2 questions there. So you basically just write a form and answer the question, make the post, and that's pretty much about it for the first part. And then the second part is I want you to grab your camera, take your camera out, taste the menu mode, which is based on what we learned, based on the aperture, based on the shutter speed, based on the ISO. And let's get out there and let's take some pictures. You can take as many as you want, or whatever the object is, but I do want to see 10 to 20 of your best shots. And I want you guys to turn them in on Moodle page. And that's pretty much about it for this week. And I will see you guys next week.